from News Nation headquarters, this is News Nation Prime.
What do you think about the Stop Nick Shirley Act?
I think you're a psycho scam artist.
They don't want to end their fraud racket. A lot of the politicians, they benefit from the political organizations, and so they want this racket to continue. They don't want the truth to get out.
Stop fraud investigations, but you're the one who signed off and you're a co-author of it.
It is a growing fight over exposing fraud. That is YouTuber Nick Shirley, whose videos have reached millions, putting a spotlight on investigations into stolen funds across the U.S. So are they protecting vulnerable communities or protecting bad actors? We're bringing in our political panel for more on this. Democratic strategist Laura Fink and Republican strategist Matt Klink. It is good to have you both here. Laura, why don't we start with you on this? When we see YouTubers like Nick Shirley start poking around, the state's first instinct seems to be this sort of legislative shutdown of his actions. The state's GOP claims that the supermajority in Sacramento believes they are above public scrutiny. What does this look like to you?
It looks like adding a clause to a year, to a 25-year law. So, and an opportunity for Republicans to make political hay out of it. Look, if Nick Shirley has fraud that he'd like to report to the California state government or any other, I would encourage him to do so. The problem is he hasn't found any. He's been in our state for any number of months, and at every turn, he has no evidence. And that's not because the politicians aren't investigating. It's because he doesn't bring the receipts. The last time he launched an investigation into voter fraud, he found one woman who he said registered her dog. It turns out that that woman was a Republican and was already prosecuted for that very fact. So this is a road to nowhere. What this law does is it protects people who work in immigration services specifically, just as it protects victims of domestic violence and service providers to domestic violence victims. This is something where really we just say you can't harass people, you can't dox them, you can't use your millions of followers to go after whomever you choose. But if you'd like to bring fraud data to the fore, please do that. If you'd like to pursue investigative journalism, you can do it as has been done in California for the last quarter century that this bill has been on the books.
Matt, what is your take here?
Yeah, the simple fact remains is that California is not doing enough, and that even on the front page of the LA Times this morning, it says hospice fraud persists in state despite alarms. There's evidence that they found 89 licensed hospices in a single two-story building. The government in power, which is the Democrats, they've held lock, stock, and barrel power in California for decades. They don't want this coming out because they're using it as a form of social welfare. Spending in the state has increased over the last decade by 48%, and the population has grown by 0.4. We have evidence of fraud that the Democrats even admit for unemployment insurance, for Medi-Cal in the county of Los Angeles, in the city of Los Angeles, for homeless funding in the billions of dollars. And guess what? They know that it exists, and the prosecutions don't come because they're protecting the status quo.
Yeah,
that these
Matt, Matt, I'm just asking, Laura, where's the evidence? You know, there's no evidence.
There is the evidence. This is from the state of California's own reports. They're not prosecuting. They know fraud exists. They're doing nothing.
Yeah, but nobody's saying no fraud exists. What we're saying is it's not at levels beyond the national averages, $50 billion of homeless fraud in Los Angeles County, $146 billion in Medicare fraud. I mean, give me a break. I mean,
Laura, let me ask you this. I mean, we recently had California Congressman Kevin Kiley on the show saying Sacramento is pushing this legislation. He says specifically because they are terrified of a Tim Walz-style fraud scandal. Let's take a listen together quickly to what he had to say.
I think it is absolutely the politicians in Sacramento saying, well, we saw what happened to Tim Walz in Minnesota when all of the fraud there came to light, and we don't want the same thing to happen to us. So it's very telling. They're proactively trying not to stop the fraud itself, but to stop those who are exposing the fraud.
So the congressman's point is if you have nothing to hide, you don't need to change the rules. Laura, what's your response to that?
My response is that he's not being threatened by false accusations. And so if you have fraud, once again, and if the congressman has evidence of fraud, if Matt has evidence of fraud, he can scream about it to legislators and to investigators.
The Democrats and state government admit it's there. They're doing nothing about it. They're doing nothing about it.
Listen, all of this, 5 years that fraud was being investigated in the state of Minnesota, and Tim Walz rightfully maybe played a political price for it. But to say that it wasn't being investigated is absurd, and to imply that Nick Shirley uncovered it is something that's been widely debunked. And so
no, the Democrats have uncovered it. They're not doing anything about it. That's the whole point.
Well, you can
That's
interrupt
the whole point.
me, and you can
They're
scream.
not doing anything about it.
You can scream all you want, but it doesn't mean that things aren't being done, and it doesn't mean that any evidence has come forward that has not been investigated or is not being investigated. And if Republicans want fraud investigated, then bring it forward and pursue it with specifics. These blanket accusations are absolutely absurd. It's political gamesmanship at its worst, because it's not solving these problems that they say are there.
Yeah, and panel, with the time that we have, I want to talk about the gubernatorial race as well. Laura, we'll start with you on this. We've seen decades of Democratic control here, but the affordability crisis is really the #1 issue for voters when polled. What is your message to the Democratic candidates here?
Well, I think affordability is being talked about. I think that's how Democrats have won every election in the past 9 months in contested races. And I think whether you're a Democrat or a Republican in California, you need to see some sort of pushback. We see at the national level, every choice that's being made is increasing the dollars that are coming out of everyday working Americans' pockets. And so I think that they want to see their governor do something about that. And so that's an issue for all of the candidates with different, all sorts of parties by their name. But, I think that the challenge here is, why are we distracting from this very affordability crisis, distracting from President Trump's moves into war to destabilize further the economy, the impact of tariffs, and just the total lack of moves being made on behalf of the Republican Party at the national level, which has a profound impact on California and every other state. I think California gubernatorial candidates are going to have to take that fact as they campaign, and they're going to have to talk about what they're going to do about it, because it's going to involve standing up to national policy.
Yeah, we're low on time. Matt, what is your take on the gubernatorial race in that state?
Eric Swalwell's implosion has opened up the race. The people in California are finally starting to pay attention to this race. And while there are 2 Republicans at the top right now, it might be mathematically possible for 2 Republicans, but it's politically unlikely. Javier Becerra is surging. And I think that Tom Steyer and Katie Porter have vote ceilings. And Matt Mahan, while he's spent and raised a lot of money, he hasn't gotten any traction yet. This race is wide open. And I think that, if it's a Republican versus a Democrat, obviously the Democratic wins easily, just given the simple mathematics in the state of voter registration. But the Democratic candidates, they're all over the place right now.
Who's going to win, Matt?
A Democrat's going to win. If it's going to be a Republican versus a Democrat, oh man, I don't know. I have no idea yet.
Matt Klink, Laura Fink, appreciate you both. Thank you.